Okay, hi, thanks for coming today. We're part of the Design Build Flag project. My name is Michael.
I'm Jocelyn.
And I'm Charles, the current year's chief engineer.
So a quick background on the project. Each year we participate in a competition. It's an international electric RC airplane competition. And there were 100 teams that competed this year or signed up. And each year there are different mission objectives. The rules are released late August, and we have till about April. This year it was held in Tucson, Arizona, from April 10th to 12th.
So we actually have a design report that's due on February. So really you only have about 6 months to design an airplane, manufacture it, and then test it. Because in that design report, we also have to show that our airplane has flown and has completed all the missions. So this is a pretty fast-paced project, and it really requires a lot of people to put in work, more so than other school projects.
So yeah, our project goals are to build our prototypes in the time frame that we have. So we have to have our design concept, and then from there we will start our prototyping. We test them out, and then like Michael and Charles said, we have our 60-page report due in late February.
So our design phase starts off with what is important for this year's competition. So we do a sensitivity analysis once the rules come out. The rules give us equations onto what is important, and so we're able to plot those equations and see what little increments of changes to certain missions will give us a better score overall. Normally we have 3 flight missions and 1 ground mission. This year our ground mission was a testing or a timed loading mission. So it's how fast can we load our payload into our airplane. So that we found was very important to our score. In fact, in this year's competition, it was the deciding factor for pretty much the top 10 planes. How fast can we load your airplane? So this competition, although it is an aerospace competition, it doesn't seem to revolve nearly as much as you would think around aerospace. A lot of it is just how light can you get your plane, and usually there is a mission where if you do pretty good on your set for the other 2 missions. So there is a sizing mission, and the other missions you would inherently get a better score on those missions by just preparing the plane for one mission. So in that sense, it isn't like a full airplane design where you're really pushing your plane in every mission, however you are. It's just because this competition is the way they created it. It's oriented towards usually weight and usually a takeoff field limit or a nav limit, and your entire plane is governed by that. So aerodynamics kind of takes a backseat to that. So I guess what we actually did in this year's competition, we scored 2nd place. That's kind of controversial. Maybe I'll let Michael and Jocelyn talk about that.
So like Charles mentioned earlier, the deciding factor for this year's competition was the loading mission. So throughout the competition, we maintained a solid 1st place lead, and towards the last day, one of the teams from University of Ljubljana, they took 1st place due to the loading mission. They had this is mainly due to the rounding scheme for the scoring. So for that mission we scored. We did a time mission of 9.7 seconds, and they did 6.5 seconds. And the scoring scheme was done so that the fastest team score is divided by your own score. So that'd be 6.5 over 9.7, and that'd be like our score for the loading. However, the judges decided to round beforehand, and that ended up lowering our score. And that's why it's controversy.
Yeah, so the 9.7 was rounded to 10, and 6.5 was rounded to 6. If they would have kept the numbers as they were, we would have won first.
Okay, so overall, this year we built about 5 planes. We started manufacturing and testing some concept designs on in the beginning of the competition, which was around September. However, rules kept changing. It was to the point where every 2 or 3 weeks the rules would change on us, so we'd have to change our design, pretty much remanufacture some things, and then go ahead and test it. And the rules don't stop changing until pretty much the competition day. So, I mean, just like the rounding scheme in the rules, it states that when you get a score, your score will be rounded to the nearest 10th. But in the competition, they changed that and made it so that your score is rounded to the nearest whole number. So things like that is one of the reasons why some people think this competition is majorly flawed. However, that's just something that we have to deal with and constantly progress and change as rules and constraints change. So 5 planes were built. I think 2 of them were destroyed in testing, and for reasons unknown still. We have some what do you say? Some ideas why it actually crashed, but nothing is definite. So I guess we'll talk about that a bit later. So Michael, you want to talk about tooling?
Yeah. So last year we began tooling, and this year we really embraced the idea. So tooling helps us create more consistent parts, and also helps us pump out those parts much more quickly than doing everything by hand. So a couple of new tools that we worked on were the fairing mold. We already had one from last year, but we made a new one to suit this year's plane dimensions. There was also the wing jig that we used to make our balsa wings. We just laser printed out all the wing parts and pop in the wing jig, and that helps speed up the process a lot more. We also did 3D printed molds. One major thing we did with that was to make the motor mount. It was carbon fiber motor mount, and with this we were able to make a lot of motor mounts and pick the ones that was the lightest and the most strong and suit our needs.
So some differences from our original plan at the beginning of the year were that we started off with 1 project manager and then operations engineer. That got merged into 2, just into 2 project managers. The other, so we planned out, we had a Gantt chart of how we would plan out when we would make each prototype. That didn't go as scheduled. We actually, our first 2 planes were delayed quite a lot. So I would say it's a bit impressive that we actually built 5 planes. A lot of people wouldn't have believed that if we said that at the beginning of the year. The CAD was, we wanted the CAD team to be, to have a member from each group do their own CADing for each part. That also didn't go as expected. It always falls back down to your CAD leader to do everything, sort of thing. And yeah, the 2 planes crashing, those were not in our original plans.
So so for the CAD, for example, our team is structured into parts of the plane. For example, we have the wing team, we have the landing gear team, sort of like a fuselage team, a motor mount team. At the beginning of the year, we hoped that each team would be designing their own parts, CADing their own parts, pretty much taking the lead and taking a design role. However, every year, although we try to do it, some people just don't step up to the plate. So, and it seems like the whole CADing job and even some of the designing job gets pushed to certain core people of the group instead of distributing that design requirement. So, although we try to, that's just not the way it seemed to work this year, and we try to push it for next year so that the stress is not placed on just a few team members.
So a couple lessons we learned. Well, we learned a lot. The main takeaway from this was that we should plan and prepare her ahead of time. We kind of come in with this project not really ready, and we didn't really step up to the plate until much later. And we were, I guess, we were lost in direction for quite some time. So it would have helped a lot with our progress if we had done some previous preparation.
So we have a huge, a pretty big group of around 30, 40 people. So that always leads to some communication problems. And when you have such a big group, you need to be, you need to have that communication between each group and the main leader, so you guys are all on the same page. That was a big problem for us. We were all not on the same page at certain points of the project. The other one that I thought was a big one was you're in a group of people, and sometimes you may not get along with each other, but you have to maintain a level of respect between each other. So that was a big part of this. So even though sometimes you may not get along, you can't show that to other people, because then they will disrespect you too. And you will lose people's trust and respect, and they won't do whatever you tell them or ask them to do. So that was a big one that I thought was one of the major ones for our team to have a better year, I guess, I would say. And then the other one was you can't rely on one person to do something. So you need to have more people who can do those type of jobs.
Oh, so during the year, we did recognize that we had some problems, and we did try to fix it. For example, the better communication. We tried to have more meetings. We implemented a new weekly leader meeting, and because normally the way it works is the leaders will pass down the information down to the people working for them, since everything is divided into teams. On top of that, we also have one weekly meeting with everyone in the whole project. So we did try to increase communication. However, we didn't have the correct structure in place, and it seemed to just get more messy that way. But after surveying the current leaders, they did say that they thought it was better than before. So in that way, we did try to improve communication. Yes, it's important to pass down information from one year to another. So back to what Jocelyn said, make sure that more than one person knows how to do a certain thing. Many times our project was delayed because we were waiting on a certain person to do one single part before we can continue manufacturing the plane. So that, I think, comes with choosing someone that you think can take your place in the next year, and trying to prepare them for their position or for a position or for that manufacturing process. So other things that I thought was important and that we learned is the project cannot be too big. It has to have a limited number of members. This is still up for discussion about how many members. However, so the first quarter we had way too many members. We had 50 to 60 members, and that was way too big. In the second quarter, we said, okay, well, we're not going to have that many members. But then so much resistance from current leaders and even people in the team saying, hey, we want to be part of this project. Please let us know the project. So in that sense, we continue to allow a lot of members in our team, and that becomes very difficult to manage. So a lot of the problems that we had and that some of the lessons that we learned is our project can't be so big that you need more than 2 people to manage, because then you end up trying to manage so many people that your project really doesn't move forward. People should be chosen. So like I said, the number of people, and all of that should be chosen based on dedication, willingness, and enthusiasm. Because there are a lot of people in our project that ended up joining our project officially, however, not really contributing to the project. So we have to determine who, I guess, should be in the project. In this project, because it's such a short time span, it does require a lot of people to make sacrifices, and that's one thing that I personally had to learn at the beginning of the year. I learned that I could not, spend weekends away from the project because things just would not move forward. So in order to take a true leadership position, it seems like you will have to be willing to make sacrifices. So doing or staying over in the weekends and even putting in some nights during the weekdays, that's pretty important, and that should be mentioned to people who want to have these new leadership positions. And once again, presence and attendance of just leadership in general helps boost the morale of the project, allowing people to come to your project feeling comfortable, ready to work, not really bogged down. So it comes back to what Jocelyn was saying about respect for each other. And I think part of that comes from people just knowing that people care and people are there to help guide you. So just leadership presence and the attendance just makes a big difference. Lastly, project funding should not be relied on by the school. The school does not give us enough money to fund BBF, so we should be looking for external methods for finding funds. However, this couple years we've been able to survive since we've gotten second place, which comes with a prize money. So. After all that, the plan is to win first place.
Yeah.